Hey y'all, it's Nancy the Handy Scandy. Welcome back for another crafty venture. And today I bring you a watercolor card that I used Lindy's Magicals to paint this adorable image and get this grubby vintage vibe. So let's go ahead and jump on into my process. So I have this adorable stamp set from Sweet Miss Daisy. It is called Happy Harvest. And I decided I wanted to pull out my Magicals. So I'm using them as watercolor medium, and I have sprinkled out several of them into my little palette. And I pulled out my Arches Cold Press block of watercolor card, and I was just using a little palette knife there to loosen it from the stack. And then I've cut it down and fit it into my Misty, and I'm using my VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink to stamp out all the images and the sentiments from this stamp set. And after I sprinkled all of my pigments out, the pigments that I wanted to use, not all of my pigments, sprinkled them out. I added some water to them. I just used a little pipette and sucked some water up from a cup of water and added it to the powder and then stirred them with my paintbrush. And then I rinsed my brush really well, and here we are. So I'm just picking up a little bit of that color and dabbing it onto the image. And while it's wet, in the places where I want the color to be a little bit deeper, a little bit darker, maybe indicate a shadow, I'm just dropping a little bit more of that color in while the paper is still wet. That allows the pigment to move around organically and go where it's going to go. Because something to remember is we always talk about wet on wet blends, wet on dry layers. So I wanted it to blend and just be darker areas, right? So here I'm using the orangier of the pigments that I've put out, and you'll notice that I'm leaving a space in between each of the ribs on the pumpkins. That's because I don't want my colors to blend. I want there to be a bit of a difference in color tone between each rib. So we'll see what I mean by that. But I went in kind of heavy-handed for that first painting of the ribs, if you will, and then I'm leaving it to dry. So I'm coming in with I can't remember the name of this one. It's something black. I wanted to say it was a Canadian bacon. There's a Canadian bacon blush, actually, that I do use later, but I can't remember the name of this black. But in any case, it is a black. And so I've colored up the bird to be a blackbird or a crow or a raven or whatever we might want to call it. And then, of course, I use the same color on the two bats. And here I'm using one of the bronzy colors to color in the moon. And then I'm using the brown to paint the, I don't know, what is that called that a scarecrow is propped up on? I have no idea what that's called. And then I decided that I wanted to use some purple. Purple as a main color on this guy. I've been inspired by Anna using purple this season, and I've seen several other people use purples, and I just thought, you know what, let me do it. Let me do that too. And I actually was going to use a purple gingham as one of the layering pattern papers on this card, and you know how things morph and change directions, right? That's exactly what happened. So we'll see what I use in the end, but I did not use a gingham. Even though he has that fun checkerboard plaid shirt, it's not really a gingham per se, it's more of a checkerboard. But yeah, here we are. Going in, painting those leaves with two tones of colors, and here's where I'm using that Canadian bacon blush on his face and on his gloves. And I come in with the brown just to indicate some shadows, and I had too much pigment on my brush. There you go, you see? And I made that darkness way too dark. And so I'm going to start using a paper towel here in a second to try to lift some of that color. I'm trying to use my brush, but the pigment soaked into the paper really fast. So just wetting my areas down with some clean water and then using my paper towel to lift that pigment. Some places it's more successful than others. And here I'm coming in with just a little bit of pigment on my brush just to finish coloring in the ribs of those pumpkins. It's the same color, it's just much more watered down so that I get that variation. And then I wasn't sure if I wanted his shirt to be purple or if I wanted his shirt to be green. Ultimately, I go with purple, and I'm not mad about it. I love it. I love the way the hat and the shirt coordinate together in the end. Adding just a little bit of color to his cheeks. And you'll notice I rinsed my brush out from the previous color, and with only clean water, I went into that little bit of pigment right there on my palette because I don't want it to be a deep dark purple. And then I go in and I pick up some more of the color because I do want there to be darkness, just like I did on his jeans. And I'm just dropping in some of that deeper, more concentrated pigment in certain areas just to create depth and shadow. And then where I want it lighter, I'm coming in with just some clean water, kind of scribbling it around, and then using my paper towel to try to lift some of that pigment with that fresh, clean water. And I want to do the same on the little bats. Just because I felt like they were a little flat. So I wanted there to be a little bit of lighter and a little bit of darker. So now I'm going to go around this guy. I've got a lot of water on this brush. This is a bigger brush. The other one I think was a 2. This one I'm looking to see if I still have it next to me. This one is a 10. And I don't know what these brushes are called in terms of the shape. I have no idea. I'm looking at them. They just say the numbers. Anyway, this one is a 10. I don't know if I said that or not. This one is a 10. And I'm using that blue pigment, that very soft blue pigment, watered down pretty severely because I just want there to be a hint of the blue around him. And then I'm going to come in with some brown and do the same thing to emulate ground below him. And I have fallen in love with this ledger stamp, y'all. In love with it. If you don't have it, if you've not tried it yet, oh my gosh, I just really, really like it. So I used a little bit of Distress ink and I sprayed it down with some water so I get more of a loosey-goosey watercolory feel as I stamp that, just to add some interest and start to grubby up this image. And now here I have the wreath from one of her new stamp sets as well, and I remember the name of it. I cannot, but I'll try to remember to link and list everything downstairs in the description box. If I forget that, y'all, please let me know, and I'll be sure to come back and add it later. I cannot remember the name of it. In fact, the wreath is the only thing from that stamp set that I used. So here I have the pattern paper. That is not the purple plaid I was going to use, and I don't know if you noticed the purple stripe, but I went from the purple gingham to the purple stripe. And I just thought this paper of hearts, this pattern paper of all hearts, was just as quaint and cute as it could be. And it feels like patchwork, right? And to me, it emulates the patches that are on his shirt and on his pants. And I just think it's super, super cute. However, as I bring in more and more grubby features, I feel like the pattern paper is just a little bit too vibrant. So you can see I'm doing that ink blending around the edges of my image, bringing that grubbiness closer and closer to him. And now I'm going to do some splatter because of course I am. I do come in with some of my Lindy's and do some splatter with those as well because they have some shimmer to them. Of course, the Distress inks do not. So here's where I decided I wanted to bring some of that grubbiness inside the card and to the back of the card. And of course, that includes the splatter. And I'm going to come in with some of the stamping as well. I don't want it to smear though, so I'm kind of fanning it so it will hopefully dry quickly. So while I set that aside to dry, I'm going to go ahead and continue to work on this panel. And that's when it hit me that, oh, yeah, these colors are pretty vibrant. I need to tone that down a bit. And I was going to punch a hole, but then I realized I need that hole to go through both layers. So let's go ahead and do that. I just think this image is so cute. And the purple stays pretty vibrant, even though I come in with the ink blending all around those edges. It still stays pretty vibrant, but I love the juxtaposition of the bright, vibrant colors against the grubbiness. So there I've toned down some of those hearts as well, coming in and just picking up that ink off my work surface and bringing that onto the card base. And I do some more of the splatter. And I have not done the stamping on the card base yet, but you'll see me do that here in just a second. Sorry it gets blurry here. I think my camera forgot what it was supposed to focus on. So this is where I picked up some of those magicals to get some of the shine. And there we go. Now I've got my chomper. I can't think what it's called. And I put that hole in there and I'm going to add a little eyelet. I just think that's a cute touch. Just pop it right in there. Crocodile, that's what it's called. Just one little squeeze and then we have it done. Pick up my excess. Then I put a piece of hemp through there, just tied it off like it were a tag, and then I got a bulb pin from my stash and a cute little leaf. And I always add a couple dots of glue when I do tags in this way because I don't want that coming undone. You see, I am not afraid to use my double-sided foam tape. I don't want there to be any saggy middles. And of course, if you've been with me for any amount of time, you know I typically will use wet glue on top of another adhesive just so I have some wiggle room. Now mounting everything together. And my goodness, I think that's so cute. I had to use one of those bats. So Fussy cut him out. Then I stamped out the sentiment. Well, you saw me in the beginning. I stamped out both sentiments. But I liked this one best in that it didn't take away from the card. And here I think I'm done. See where I've done all that stamping. I've done the wreath. I've done the ledger. I've done the splatters. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I didn't sign or do the handmade by. So I pulled out that stamp set, which is called handmade by. And oh, I missed his head, so I have to go back in and fix that. I love adding these little personal touches. Let me fix my little bulb pin there and my fun little leaf. And there we go. There's the inside of the card with all those grubby features, even some of that pattern paper and another little batty bat. And the back side again with the pattern paper and the grubby features and the handmade by, but it's not signed yet until now. So there we go. So leave me a comment. Let me know your thoughts on this. And if you would like to be in the running to receive this card, put yes, please. And anyone who puts yes, please in their comment will be in the running, and I will do a drawing in 1 week from the day this posts. And whoever wins that random drawing will receive this card in the mail from me. So thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for all of your love and support and your kindness. And again, put yes, please, if you want to be in the running for a chance to win this sweet little Scarecrow card. And like I said, I grubbied him up. He has that vintage vibe, but I used my magicals, my Lindy's magicals, which I haven't done in a while, and that was so much fun. So thanks again, guys, and until next time, mwah, this is Nancy, the Handy Scandy, and I'm out.